This is Mike Franklin, the property tax guy, and today I'm going to talk about what happens when somebody calls me with a concern about their property taxes. Basically, uh, first thing they'll do, they'll give me a call and they'll start relaying what their issue is. I'll ask them for their address. I'll try to while we're speaking, we'll try to pull up the property on the county in the county records, and I'll look to verify the inventory, make certain that that's correct. And then I'll ask them questions about, what the circumstances were. Did they recently purchase the property? How long have they owned the property? Is this a recent increase? Just get a feel for, the history of what the situation is. And in the course of talking about it, I'll probably quickly interject and say, what do you think you could get for this property? And, kind of put them on the spot. And try to get an honest answer to the question. And, if they hem and haw about it, that's one thing. If they say, there's no way in hell I could get that amount of money if I were to sell this property, well, that would be an excessive argument. If they think that they probably could get that amount of money for, if they could sell it for what it's assessed for, fair market value, if they think that they could, then we move on to the unequal analysis. Are they aware of other properties that are as good or better that are assessed for less? And I try to establish, whether or not they're legitimately overassessed or whether or not they just don't like paying taxes. Because there's a difference between high taxes and high assessments. The high taxes comes from the school district you're in, from the school budget. A lot of people don't vote on the school budget. They should. It's the county budget. It's the town budget. Those are what impact the tax rate. So either the tax rate is high or the tax rate is low. It can vary tremendously across the state. For example, the city of Syracuse, it's pretty high. City of Fulton, it's ridiculously high. The town of Old Forge is ridiculously low. And the reason it's low is because they get a lot of tourism, and I think they take in a lot of money for sales tax, so they don't need property taxes. So, for example, Lake Placid, tax rate's extremely low, but the properties tend to be extremely high end. So it's a combination of, the overall cost. So anyway, if so, let's just say you don't have any kids, living in the Fayetteville Manlius School District, for example, you're going to be paying for other people's kids to go to school. So, you need to be, selective about, where if you have kids and you want them to go to Fayetteville Manlius High School, it's apparently a very good high school. So that may be the reason why you'd want to be there. But if you're in the retirement mode, might want a place that's more, school tax rate is much lower. But what they use your assessment for is to figure out what your percentage, what's your percentage of the tax burden is. So what they do is they take the assessment, they try to accurately calculate a fair market value of your property and all the other properties in that municipality. And then your assessment, fair market value divided by the total, is your percentage of the budget. So, the high taxes come from a high tax rate. The assessor is just trying to establish what the accurate value of your property is. And some towns do the job better than others. It's a very difficult job for the assessor to get it right. So, that's my job, is to help you to get to the bottom of it and get through all the bureaucracy and the paperwork and so on and so forth. So, but anyway, so if I conclude that you may have an argument, the next thing I'll do is do the Freedom of Information Act request. I'll email the town clerk and I'll ask for the comparable sales report, comparable assessment report, cost valuation report for each property they use as a comparable, and the comparable sales and comparable assessment report. If there might be a land valuation issue, I would foil the land tables. There can be other reports depending on but it's usually, that's the core of it. And some municipalities like to evade that request, but it's a lawful request and they're required to provide it. They have to acknowledge within 5 business days and fulfill it within 20 business days. But some of them, like the city of Syracuse, like to evade that, so I have to sue them, Article 78. And, to get that data, I then, once I get the data, I'll look at it and I'll analyze it. And if there's no argument, I tell the taxpayer that I don't think you have an argument, but I won't just tell them I don't think they have an argument. I'll tell them exactly why, and I'll have done an analysis. If I think they do have an argument, then we enter into an agreement. I would represent them and take care of the Board of Assessment Review and take care of SCAR, Small Claims Assessment Review. And that's pretty much the extent of it. It's best if we get to the truth of the matter. I think everyone should be willing to pay their fair share. And I don't help people that are looking to get something for nothing. The objective is to get it to be what it's supposed to be, nothing more and nothing less. That's the objective. And so that's pretty much what happens when you give me a call about this stuff. I'm very quick at doing the analysis, and I can tell very quickly. When I do the FOIL request, I can how the assessor responds to that request will give me an idea of the integrity and the competence of what it is that they're doing. And assessors that are ashamed of their data tend to try to hide their data. Assessors who are on top of their game just provide it because they're proud of it. They're proud of the work that they did, the data that they've gathered. And so I look to see how they respond. If I see that there's a problem with an assessor, well, I concentrate the next year on that assessor, and I solicit people who may have issues in that municipality, because obviously there's a problem. So when you've got an assessor who's not doing the job properly, and particularly if it's a high tax rate, well, those are the kinds of things that I concentrate on, and that's the extent of it. This is Mike Franklin, the property tax guy.